This is December 19th. We'll first start off with doing some introductions. We'll do the people that are here presently, and then we'll go on screen. So if you are online, you've got the hand if you are there. Let me first introduce myself. My name is George Redmond. I am the JCPC chair, as well as senior attorney for the sheriff's office here in Buncombe County. I will go to my right.
What's the
Regina Herring, I'm the director for Justice Services.
I am Judge Dodson Smith, go by Smitty, and I am the District Court Justice designee, and I serve on the family court rotation.
Good morning, I'm Robert Deal. I'm with myself.
Hi, I'm Monica Alexander at Mass Report from Justice Services Department.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hannah Ledgerton, Youth Justice Division Manager with Buncombe County and staff support for the JCPC.
I'm Brandon Fleischer with Landescott Regional Council. I'm the vice chair of the committee.
Banta Whitmer, community member.
Craig Loveland, I'm a sergeant with the Ashland Police Department.
Minnie Rabowski, community member.
I'm Rebecca Smith, I'm the social director.
David Denninger, I'm an assistant district attorney, and I currently serve as a juvenile court prosecutor, among other things.
Lynn Boy, also the DSM. Amy Redmond, I'm with Parks and Recreation.
We have Dennis, who kind of just came through as well.
Scott Lewis, the public defender's
Don't
office.
worry, Scott, we're not live.
Jose Infanzon for UNETE.
Karen Pearson, the Buncombe Alternatives, Restorative Services.
Oh.
I'm still good for now, I'm the Chief Court Counsel with Juvenile Justice.
Thank you. And so thank you all for everyone who's able to attend here in person. Looks like Ms. Ross and DK, that's the only two that we see.
Michael Hayes is on as well, but they are having trouble hearing us. I've asked, I was under the impression Cape was going to have somebody here to help with the technology, so I've asked for that to come again. So hopefully that will happen. I'm going to try to troubleshoot a little bit while we are proceeding.
Here. So as we move on in the agenda, after we have the introductions, again, I hope everyone is having a wonderful week and ultimately has a wonderful holiday as we look forward to the end of 2024. The next on our agenda is reviewing the board minutes that we had, I believe, from October. Wasn't sort of a normal agenda, I believe, due to the hurricane. It was an agenda where we could at least hear back from the programs and offer any support that may be. So it wasn't a normal agenda. That agenda, I believe, was shot out from Hannah to everyone here. If you've had time to review that meeting that came through, those minutes from that meeting, we would need a motion to approve, and we would need a second. If there is anything in there that you feel needs to be revised or edited, then please speak now before we have that.
This is for the October. I just wanted to say this also.
My Zoom meeting link? Yes.
Second. All right. Second.
Okay.
All approved, say aye.
Aye.
have any issues, say nay. All right, so it looks like we have, we approved the 4 minutes from October. Thank you, Hannah, for providing those.
We also didn't officially vote on the August ones because we were, in October, we didn't have any official actions.
So you said August and October.
Yes.
All right, so I guess what we'll redo is we have both the August and the October minutes that were in there. I know we already had a motion for the October minutes, so if we can go through and see if, again, if anyone has reviewed those minutes from August as well, we'll entertain a motion in a second from those. And again, if you have any edits or thoughts or revisions on the August minutes, please speak now.
Move to approve the August minutes.
All right. All approved, say aye.
Aye.
Any that do not approve, say nay. Have your neck up.
She's had some personal issues that she's had to address.
I want to shout out Florida for a moment. Florida actually has one of the most robust public-facing juvenile justice data dashboards in the country. It's amazing. And North Carolina, we released our red data publicly to us for the first time
I know
last
it
year.
shouldn't be all to say Florida is out there.
Yes.
I understand, but you know.
But strategically, it may mean that if we need information or access from our General Assembly, that they may be willing to look at Florida for something way more data.
Yes, Florida and Texas have two of the most robust data sharing for juvenile justice at the state level. It's amazing. But yes. So
And I have contacts on both of those levels. But I do want to talk. I think being specific and rather than having them just pour us with a whole lot of data, I think the request to them should be what we need in order for us to assess, because you're just going to be inundated with data that you can't do anything with. And I think if we make the request, they should be able, because they have the data, it's just how we need them to present it to us.
Yeah, and we can speak to Crystal and Bruce about that. Yeah, we're not happy about it, and we want to see changes. So it's something that we definitely want to address. It's because it doesn't feel good to come and talk about this and go, maybe we can, so because we know we have a lot of work to do around this.
I have a question.
One of the things that happen, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, one of the things that happens is because we're looking at the court system and the juvenile justice system, they're looking at each stage in that system, at referral, at intake, and then they're looking at what happens, what percentage of those are being approved for court and what parts which ones are being diverted. So it's looking at each point in the court system. So that's why they've got the number of complaints, because it's court data that they're pulling in this specific, but they can pull it by individual too. It's just a different.
And that might be something that would be interested in knowing too, is each touch point of the system.
Right.
Because you want to know at the front end of the system. For me, I'd be interested to know what the numbers are for our first time offenders and how many. I'm gonna go into that one, but first time they touch the system, how many of those kids, and then look at that breakout. Because it's, we know it's all systemic, okay? But let's look at how those numbers, and do we get it, is there a way we could show it demographically? So, and I'm sure you probably see where most of our numbers are coming from. And that way it allows us, I think, to strategize within the systems players, to strategize where the emphasis could be or should be.
Right, jurisdictionally where these kids are located.
Right. And so then we could, speak with law enforcement and various partners to see what's happening, what are the trends and what are some of the charges too.
I think if I could just say that, just so I'm clear, this is what you take as not, if a referral is made, that's not, it's whether you accept it. Is that correct? And then the other thing I think we need to be very clear on is that in the school system, doing these complaints, there is a significant amount it's the same person being referred again after again after again. And so our numbers are by complaint only, not by person. So that will change, I think, dramatically, at least for Asheville City Schools. I'm very clear on who we're charging in Asheville City Schools, and I can tell you it is a small group consistently. So,
We do believe in our city.
What's that?
We do believe that with the city.
So I think the numbers are the numbers, but I think it's also important for us to know that I think that those percentages will adjust as far as race and equity, because they're just being this. It's just unfortunately the same folks that are getting it. So, yeah.
I'm sorry. Can you go back to what you just said? You said that when we're looking at school-based offense complaints
Yes,
and saying that they declined, that's not the number of people who came in and filed complaints.
That's the disparity right there.
The number of complaint, not, but you just said just those that are approved are captured?
is that right?
Then
So if let's say
No.
if I provide a complaint to you, if that essentially, the numbers are just the complaints that arrive in, not what you accept as,
The complaint, the company, yeah.
That's counted.
Yeah, whether it gets diverted or whatever, just the complaint process, what it comes in is what's being, the numbers you see.
So when an SRO comes in as a complainant, or anyone is a complainant,
Right.
if you decline it, if you divert it, if you approve a petition, it's captured. Okay, thank you.
But these are specifically school-based complaints, which are majority of the SROs. Sandra, I think you had a question.
My question was about demographics also, like where are the complaints sourced? Yeah.
And this is, and now you just brought something, this is kind of, a little deceiving, because when you see these numbers, when someone looks at it, they assume it's individuals.
Yeah, I said the same. I know.
No,
And that's where we're
so
struggling
that-
with needing the
Yeah,
clarity.
I think,
Yeah.
so, and I think we have to be mindful and careful how we publish this, because the public's eyes, they're thinking 300 people,
Right.
kids, when it's complaints. So it could be actually 50 kids with a whole lot of complaints, so.
Yeah.
I think
Disclaimers will need to be added
to make
underneath the bottom to
sure
clarify any of that.
Because, that becomes from the public's eye, not knowing what they're looking at. Because that was what I was looking at first when I thought there were 336 kids. Okay, I said, well, that's a good drop from 181. But, okay, now I understand, because I was looking at by individual, so it'd be good for us to maybe in reporting, some kind of way compartmentalize that so we can.
Yes, and that's been a heavy part of our discussion regarding that issue, and how, again, we'll be figuring out how we can look at rectifying that and making recommendations, because it makes it very difficult to be able to disseminate what's going on here with 100% assurance.
Yeah.
So is that something you work with Sylvia or Lorraine? Who's having to put in log in that data? Is that Lorraine?
Yeah, I'm getting the road data from Crystal and Melissa.
So you can report out the stacking them?
Well, we don't have that much detail in that report. We only anecdotally.
So that's why I'm
provide
trying to
that.
understand.
Yeah.
So you would need, DJJ to give you that detail before you can put it together. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, there are a couple of different sources, and for the school, let me just say on the last page of that risk and needs report, there is a page that is the public facing dashboard for the school justice partnership. And it is interactive, so you can go, all 100 counties are on there, you can click on Buncombe, on District 28, and then you can also click on just the felony charges or just the misdemeanor charge types that are in that middle column, over, like in that middle column for charge types, and also on the intake decision, you can click on any one of those, and as you click on it, so just say just the misdemeanor show up, the race and ethnicity data over on the right and the gender data adjusts when you do that. And it is very telling to do that for school-based offenses. You can go visually watch for misdemeanors, the white bar gets bigger, and for felony charges, even though there are only 19 of them, the black one gets bigger.
But these are
So
good
watch
complaints.
that.
These aren't individuals. So when you look at it, everyone sees it and sees
Yeah.
like a number of things as individuals, and
But
it's not
that's my
individuals.
question though, is this not set up
It's not
where it's not set up by individual?
No.
But that's not a difficult thing for them to do in your IT shift. It's just not there.
Yeah, that's not what's on this dashboard.
Okay, but
These are
that
by
is not,
complaints,
okay.
yeah. Yeah, and there is other data, we just have to ask them.
Yeah.
To pull it, and there are other dashboards I can go look at too. We have to ask them to pull it. But you can, I'm just letting you all know about that, if you wanna go look by complaint. And then anecdotally, we had some discussions about, so that 181 school-based complaints, but there were, I think, 600 something total complaints. So more came from the community, directly from law enforcement or that type of thing. And of those, we had discussions about the stacking, which, of course, happens with charges. And we were using an example of, like if a couple of youth go around and take baseball bat and hit a bunch of mailboxes, often the victims for each mailbox are gonna wanna take out charges. They're all included. So you might have 50 charges, 50 complaints.
For one
For
individual,
one
which would skew
individual.
the numbers, yes.
Which is
So-
what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so question I have, there's 2 school districts.
Correct, yeah.
Do we have data on each school district and where the kids are coming from those districts versus community kids? Because you could break out in schools crimes and out of school.
We have not had that data. Now, I just discovered this year that on the same page as this dashboard, there's actually Department of Public Instruction dashboards, but I haven't, that do go by school, but I don't know how detailed they are. I haven't looked at them in detail.
They don't have the same level of detail. They don't have last year's data up.
Their data. So no, the answer is we don't have that detail, and I think we have to get that probably from the schools.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with several systems.
And there's been conversation in the School Justice Partnership about the SROs and their own data tracking that they are doing to some extent, though it's like receiving individual updates and then typing it into an Excel file. So that's something that we were just discussing the other day with George and the Buncombe County SROs about whether that's a potential area for system improvement as well. So that
We put in a specific request, obviously, to the people who have that authority. I think the SROs within the city and the county have the ability to track which ones they have, and so we'll get that. And then the specific request to go to for the red data, I think that's relevant as well. So all those things I think are going to be needed as we go into 2025 to kind of track a little bit better what's relevant as we make these decisions for the youth. Do you have a question in the back?
Well, I'll talk to Angie about it later, but my question was just, I always think about, where does it start? We're starting with, I wouldn't say preschool,
Elementary school or middle.
5, is it the middle school? That's, when is you're starting to see the, I won't say violence, but the complaints and the behaviors starting with the young people, and, and what is the solution to trying to stop it there before they get to high school?
Yeah.
Because I know that when I'm at the schools, I see a lot of kids who are on modified school days.
Mm-hmm.
And those modified school days give those kids a lot of time.
Yes, idle time too.
Yeah, idle time. And those kids who are on those modified days are just, end up, because, the school system, I know it's not supposed to be a punishment, but they never get back to full time at school.
Right.
But it wasn't meant to be a punishment. It was meant for them to work on those behaviors, get some treatment, get some counseling or whatever, and then move back into coming back to school full time. But it's rarely that they make it back. And they start modified days in elementary school and middle school. And so then it's just it continues from that point on. So,
and we do have, I think it's broken down at least into ages. So I guess we can kind of determine anything under 10, 11, I think is all elementary at that point. And then I guess we can kind of break it down that way to determine middle school, high school, and elementary school. But yes, that's a huge concern that we're having right now with schools is it being more of a permanent modification as well as suspensions. These things are just blowing up the whole issue. The kids aren't getting better. SROs are getting frustrated. And so it's not helping. We're somehow missing the boat on trying to find some sort of treatment that's needed for these kids, and suspension isn't just the answer that's needed. So a lot more to work on as we try to move forward. The School Justice Partnership will continue to grow, but those are concerns that we're also looking into.
Yeah, that, just a shout out to Sylvia and her group. I think the numbers are a lot different for us, at least for Asheville City Schools, because we now, although several of my SROs have had an open communication with Sylvia and her group, but now it's even more open in that before we even fill out a juvenile petition, we have a conversation with them. What does this look like? Here's what we have. Here's all the information. Is this something that you guys would be interested in? What does that look like? And if there's any question about it, then the juvenile petition is completed. But we're taking that the same as we have to go before a magistrate's office and say, here's what we have. Can we get a warrant for this crime? It's that same opportunity with locally here with Buncombe County that I hope all the SROs are using. And I think at least for us at Asheville City Schools, we've been able to drop the amount of petitions made just because, through that conversation that we've moved to the school justice side of things rather than the EJJs.
And I know it's been a little frustrating for some SROs, but it does work. If they call and speak with the intake counselor to discuss, what you have and what that looks like, and we can provide some guidance to SROs.
That's before the complaint then.
Correct, absolutely.
Yeah. And so the push that we're trying to do is referrals. Referrals. Everything's got to be referrals. We're so used to, on the back end, filing petitions based on action. But if we're trying to prevent crime, you've got to be ahead of the train and not behind it. The only way to do that is perhaps the SROs who have the vision in those schools to not wait for action to actually occur, but to kind of get ahead of things that they may see in anticipatory and refer out. And that's the whole goal of what we're trying to do with School Justice Partnership as well as JCPC, is just flip that sort of trend that we've been used to. We've been used to petitions getting everything, all the treatment is petitions. And so we're trying to change the mindset. And APD is doing a wonderful job. BCSO, it's a work in progress. I think we have 10 times as many SROs in the schools, so we've got a lot more different personalities as SROs. But I think bit by bit, we're trying to change that narrative. And I think that will help change the treatment that we're getting these kids if we can flip that into referrals as opposed to petitions.
We do have a comment in the chat from Shannon Martin, who's now our Buncombe County Schools Director of Student Services. She was just adding that they do run into similar data challenges when they are doing an overview of general discipline data within the school system. As I believe that's probably Shannon, I'm interpreting that as based off of disciplinary action as opposed to individual.
So when we do, and just to interject, because we are looking very much at our patterns around discipline data as similarly around race and gender and age and all the things to look at how our code of conduct implementation is going. And unless you are in that school, you would not see that if you may have a high number of referrals, but that probably belongs to a very small percentage of kiddos, if that makes sense. So that if you look at the total number of disciplinary referrals in general, whether they involve criminal charges or not, and we don't always track that in our disciplinary system, a small number of kiddos tend to make up a large number of the referrals. And so the school may look like it's overusing discipline. And in some cases, we definitely are using that at that granular level to look at interventions for those kids. But it just skews what it looks like for the population total, because you can't drill it out for public communication to show that it is a small number of pupils, because then you start to look at some questions about whether or not you can then drill down to who the people in general are you're talking about.
So for those kids that are your repeat cycle kids, in any one school district, and this is, I guess, to address that prisoner pipeline continuum, is there like a multidisciplinary team to be able to look at, the continuum of what's going on with that kid, and how do you intervene so this is not a perpetual, it keeps, going and it's going down that cycle. If we're seeing this kid, Johnny is going over, he's forever, at what point does the systems actors come together and say, let's look at what's happening to Johnny? And looking at a plan for those 10 kids or however many kids. Because that's the goal of your prison, to interrupt that. So and it sounds like these are not large numbers. But is there such a process? I don't know.
And are you speaking of, because the school to prison pipeline is specifically with law enforcement and crimes? A lot of times.
It's school-based, it's initiative, everybody call it different.
Okay.
But it's a school-based initiative, which justice partners, school partners will come together and they put together practices in which works to minimize those kids, because it typically starts at 3rd grade, that they start going into that pipeline of going to prison.
Okay.
So for those, and that comes with your kids who are forever, you see all the time. Something's going on with that kid. And so where's the interrupters? We should be the interrupters to say, IEP, what is it going, this family issues, what is it that we need to do to, change that trajectory for Johnny?
Yeah.
And so so if it's a smaller base number, because they're gonna wind up going to the court system at some point, how do you interrupt that? So that was my thought, because we have a small sector of kids. And many of them, I guarantee you, they're your Black kids, your low-income kids, your IEP, some type of modifications are going on with that kid. And so what are we doing as I call it multidisciplinary, because you have your social workers, your teachers, your law enforcement, judiciary, state attorney, y'all call them district attorney, public defenders, all a part of, the discussion.
So that sounds like that could be part of what School Justice Partnership is trying to get at, but that we're probably not to that level yet. So I don't know whether or not, one thing I think we'll be looking at in the coming year especially is trying to establish the work groups. We've spent a lot of time since we kind of got created or agreed. The first memorandum was sort of right around COVID. So it's been a slow start to just getting to know each other, I think, and getting to build trust. And so my hope is that we can establish some work groups in the coming year, and that would allow folks to maybe drill down on different parts and sectors of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we used to have something like that, John, do you remember? It was like mental health. No, it's not security, it was that.
I was somewhere along your child advocacy.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I know before I moved back up here to Asheville in Georgia, they had that for child in needs of services, which is kind of unruly, disruptive, those kinds of things. They would put together a multidisciplinary team to address those things at that early intervention stage. I know we're in the works of getting it, but I don't think it's in place. So that's the right idea, I think.
You probably have it together, in some variation.
And I know that, once a young person is involved with DJJ, you have the JJTC where you bring folks together. But that's further deeper in, whereas opposed to this would be more at the school-based level.
Yeah, and proactive, because we don't want them to get there and then have the team. We want the team on the front end, and we can catch that early on.
But the schools are trying to put in a behavioral intervention plan for these kids if they do have an IEP, and they do try to bring in the counselors and the resources to kind of see what we can do to help with those behaviors. And not collecting value, but if you get a care manager and then bring in a family partner for the family to help find those resources in the community to help the child with those behaviors. A teen IEP means to make sure that they're getting everything that they need at school, the education piece and the learning piece and the behavior part. So it's out there. I know a lot of them know that it's out there. they tried, school tried.
So
This is, can I, well, and this is Shannon again, I'm sorry. That's 100% correct for our system. And it's not just students with IEPs, our students with 504 plans, and even our students that don't have either of those supports. We can, and we have 46 buildings and, you know, not perfect employees all the time, but at our leadership level, that's one of the reasons we look at this discipline data, even outside of charges, is we want to make sure that we're pulling the appropriate teams together to look at all the different types of supports and interventions and referrals and community partners that we can bring in to support them. So, you know, Angie Garner, I think, is here too. I remember way back in the day when we in Buncombe County as a community really rested on the idea of being a systems of care community. And we had really strong child and family team structures that involved schools, but it also involved our mental health partners, our DSS partners, probably not as much our law enforcement partners because it was a different time in the world. And I think we do miss those. They still exist, they still live, but the robustness of that work, because I've now done this for 25 years, is not where it was. And even if we could look at strengthening that, that would be an excellent partner to the work that at least the Buncombe County schools system is trying to do around pulling those multidisciplinary teams together to support kids.
So what I was going to say was, I know that we are focused on juveniles, which that's what the title of the group is, but I'm curious, and I've asked this before, what are we doing to look at the faculty and the administration? Because we're looking at it as we got to get the kids before this, we got to get them before that, and I agree with all of that. But if the implicit bias is still there, no matter how much we work on the kids, they're going to see behavior issues differently based on the color of their skin or their socioeconomic status or their gender. So if it's not this group, what group do we need to get connected with to say we need to go in and have trainings for admin, for the teachers, so that they are understanding, because we can give Johnny all the help we can get with Johnny's mom. Johnny can learn how to use his words instead of his fists. And then that one day that Johnny it's the perfect storm, and the teacher still sees Johnny's behavior as criminal, but not Tom's behavior as criminal, and then Johnny's still sent. So I think everything that we're talking about doing, great. And how do we then get into the schools and get to the teachers and help them understand whatever implicit bias, whatever uncomfortableness is there, that they're still seeing behaviors unfairly, or, oh, that's just boys being boys, versus, no, that's wrong, don't do that. And because it hits on so many different areas. And so that's what I would advocate for, is yes to all this, and how do we get to then the educators so that they can see it differently and maybe even pull the kid aside before even making the referral. So you're getting it on both sides. You're helping the kid with whatever the child may be going through, but you're also helping the faculty that deal with them 8 hours a day better understand what may be going on.
Hopefully the school justice partnership, I mean, it's got to go from the superintendents down. I mean, you're talking about DI, you're talking about these teachers need to be trained, and it's just a different sort of way. And it's got to come systemically all the way down from the top. And hopefully that's something, because I know that superintendents and all the education staff is with school justice partnership have come up with their own sort of code of conduct, which I believe is a first step. But I think you're talking about getting into the schools and actually being able to work with some of those teachers to be able to help adjust and adapt to some of these kids. So.
And potentially being able to look at data through that lens of if there's particularly high rates of referrals, is that also a teacher in classroom that might need some additional intervention?
I think one of the other things that we really have to figure out where to address is we're running into what I think are systemic gaps that, you know, this is JCPC. I'm mindful of the time and where we are on the agenda. Yeah. We're, you know, kind of tasked with also making sure that these resources available for people in the system so they don't come back, right? Even though all of us know we don't want anybody in the system, right? But that's what this council, thank you, my committee, commission, council, whatever the C word is today of this, that's what we're tasked to deal with. The school justice partnership has a memorandum that includes certain issues, and some of these are not in there. Now, we may want to update it, but it's also, and I know Hannah and I've talked about this a lot, it's like, which organization or which council or committee is supposed to be tasked with training teachers and faculty. Well, you know, I would think it would be within the school system that that should be happening. And if it's not, where is that connection, right? So it's really hard. And I think that sometimes we can kind of have these preliminary discussions, but it's about having to communicate with some of these other administrative leadership lines that we need that attention, but it may not be in the purview of particular committees on which we sit, and that's a challenge.
If I just may add to what she's saying, I think, and what Dr. Noah is saying, we were reading minds. I don't think it's the responsibility of either committee to do the work. It's the responsibility of the committee to brainstorm and make recommendations for folks to do the work. Because it's going to be the school board who actually pursues the trainings, but they have to be on board. And I think it's the collaboration of influence that gets them to that. So, and I think it comes down to deciding what's the mission of each group. And once, you know, if it's the school, I'll get these, the partnership, then I think it's defining what your focus is. And if it is to eliminate kids from entering into the prison system from schools, then you figure out what those strategies are, what those goals are and objectives. And then you work toward those in collaboration with the partnerships.
I would hope to make sure that in those conversations, you also include relationship building with the parents, because it honestly wouldn't matter how much effort you put into Johnny if the mama doesn't trust you. The mama is not going to go sit in an IEP meeting without an advocate there to help them understand. And an advocate is not going to be able to encourage Johnny's mama to come if she hasn't built a relationship. That's like the biggest part that we end up missing. All this work we put in to have a kid succeed still needs to have a mom's buy-in. Mom is tired of answering phone calls. Parents, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, brothers. Parents. Well, that sounds good. Parents, but it's huge. Just coming from this community, there's not a lot of trust with Black parents and any outsider offering assistance. That's a huge relationship that has to be built to have someone feel comfortable to have an advocate come in. I only say that because I do that. That is like something I do outside of my own 9 to 5. And that, just because I was Black, didn't come because I was Black, because I put in the work to have a relationship with parents, to help them go to an IEP, to stay on top of what needs to happen school-wise. And we can have all kinds of diversity trainings and teachers sign off on it. But if we don't encourage like consequences for not following through, you can sign off and nod your head and be in agreement in these classes, and then your numbers are showing differently because you are treating Shaniqua different than Sally, and they're behaving the same way in the class, and we see this, but you don't have a biology teacher, so you're keeping the teacher on staff. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to just come out in the open if we're trying to move forward. I, for one, am about to just lose my mind over all these kids we have dying that I've known. It's starting to really take a toll on me. And being a part of this board, I wanted to see difference. And I'm not saying that nobody's making a difference. I'm just saying we're seeing larger numbers with these fatalities. And, you know, we can't look at what we used to do. We really need to look at changing things up going forward, including the parents.
Yeah, and what I do want to say is that obviously we have a lot of stuff to talk about with this. If this could take up just one full meeting, and I think we all know that. This is one of those ones where we have red data, we have her come in and just dive in. I mean, it could take up a full day and just have a whole session. But knowing that we don't have a full day, I want to make sure that we do get to agenda, because when it gets past 10, I think the eyes start to get towards me. And so I don't want to be, and I say all that with all this, these are great discussions. These are, I love this. I wish we had a full day to be able to discuss all this, but I think everyone understands with what we've been talking about, how important this issue is, how relevant the certain data that we're trying to get is, all this kind of stuff. We'll take that as we go into 2025 with specific requests. As we move forward, we're trying to do better, and we will do better as we move on throughout the year. But I wanted to swing it on back to Angie to see if there's anything else, because we still have other committees. I want to make sure that everyone has their time to kind of wrap it up and figure out what else is needed on our end.
Got it, yes. Okay, yeah, we could go on and on. So we're gonna finish this up, knowing that this is definitely not the end of this conversation at all. It's really just the beginning. So again, what we had to do was decide, looking at the elevated risk, needs, and strengths, what priorities were we going to be looking at choosing. So we switched it around a little bit from last year. And if you look on the last white page, page 6, we have this here, that are priorities. This took a while, and we changed them around a little bit after discussion over a few meetings. And of course, priority 1 is very important, and that's important to juvenile justice because it's a mandate, the restitution and community service part. And then 2, the restorative services, just restorative justice, teen court. And you all remember last year, you know, we did bring on a new program that we funded because we had some money that we had to reallocate because another program did not receive the allocation, the structured day program, due to low numbers and changes again in how the school is handling their own suspensions and all. So we brought in Emoja, and Unite worked along with them, and they're doing a lot of great work in the school. And we, of course, came to find out they were working with a lot of our kids anyway, and they weren't even receiving funding from us. So it was just a win-win with their presentation and the youth that they were serving. And then, of course, vocational skills. The last thing I want to say is priority number 6, which is substance misuse. That took a lot of discussion and time deciding where to put that, higher, lower, because what we do know is that there are limited services, and I'll just be totally honest, sometimes to none, for substance use outpatient services for youth. Because of that, a few years ago, we did fund a program through the county, which was initially discussed and designed to administer CCAs, comprehensive clinical assessments, because during COVID, the pandemic, Youth Villages, who administers the assessments for DJJ and also DSS, they lost a lot of staff. There was a wait list for DJJ youth, and that was just really unacceptable. And Judge Dawson Smith really spoke up and said, we have to do something about this. So the county did hire a clinical therapist to do assessments, but come to find out Youth Villages was able to bring staff back in, and that need really wasn't there any longer. However, we had this program, and so they shifted to look at, okay, can we do substance misuse counseling and groups? And unfortunately, the program after a few years just didn't get off the ground. They weren't able to receive referrals, so that program is no longer. That doesn't mean that we don't feel that substance misuse is not a priority. It is. However, in discussing all of that, we feel that if we have these other services or programs in place above that, hoping that maybe we won't have youth that will get to the point, right, of using substances and also it's hard. All these matter. All these are very important. And here are a list of priorities that we did choose.
There's a program from Harvard. It's for prevention, substance use prevention. And in UNETE, where we have our youth, we utilize a nurse from Mexico. It's part of her service hours. So she comes and provide talks about it. And she utilizes a combination of her own information or material, and also combined with the what was the name of without vaping or something like that, but it explained, and it has different levels for middle school and also high schoolers. So it's for free, and I can share that information if it's needed. And it's not complicated, and it's very entertaining. And then also at the end, it has a Kahoot questionnaire, so the kids are getting engaged in that, and we provide prizes and things like that at the end. So and it's sad because you can ask the room of kids how many of you have been offered vaping or any other substance, and pretty much everybody raised their hand. So, but there are a couple of resources, and I connect with a nurse from Mexico. They have a specific area, and they do it as a community service. So anybody's interested.
And how often does she come to you?
Excuse me?
How often does she come to your program?
Well, the moment we need it, but she liked that much the program that she comes every day as a tutor. After that, we offer 2 hours of academic support, and she stays there and help the kids with homework. So, yeah.
And that's just saying, once, you hear, again, if there's money that needs to be reallocated, or we get to the point where we're talking about there will be reallocation of funding, and it would the priority would be maybe for current programs. That's something to think about. If a current program is this something that we maybe want to bring on just to enhance what we're providing for the youth from what the need we're seeing. Because we all know this, that hasn't changed with youth. If you've worked with youth, regardless if it was 25 years ago or now, they're influenced by their peers more. Because once they get older, they're more apt to listen in a group setting than an individual setting. And they really just want to know that you're listening and respecting them. And that probably are the 3 things that have never changed. There's a lot of changes, but that doesn't change. So something like that, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Angie. Obviously, these priorities come from the data, stuff that we've kind of looked into, and this is what allows us to kind of move into sort of Andy's role when we start monitoring committees and doing stuff like this. So this is just part of the process, the steps needed, right? With planning, looking at the risk, looking at assessments, figuring out priorities, and then from there, starting to monitor committees. So Andy, can you transition into that?
Yeah, sure. So the role of the monitoring committee is obviously to monitor and evaluate program activities and outcomes. And I will say, just as we've talked a lot about various root causes and system level changes, it's also not lost on us that we do have resources at our disposal, and part of the role of this committee is to allocate north of $600,000 to programs that we would deem to be useful for our youth. And so one of the things that I'm particularly intrigued by as we go into this stage of the monitoring is in looking at this data here of complaints and looking at the number of students that are reflected here, getting a better understanding of what percentage of the students reflected here are those that are coming from the complaints and which interventions are working or not. And I just really want to lean in with the broader team of people that are focused on monitoring is not just the program activities, but the program outcomes. I would like to believe that in the not too distant future, we can actually look at individual students and have an understanding for student A is a part of program, insert program, and that has or hasn't improved their outcomes in school or reduced the number of complaints. That to me is the through line from the program committee into the monitoring committee. So January and February are busy months for us, where we'll actually be getting out and sitting down with the program leaders and doing those monitoring evaluations. I'll be working with Lorraine. Actually, we're connecting after this to start to work through the logistics and the program outreach for respective programs. And then I'll be working with the team to schedule site visits starting in January. And as I understand it, the team is Brandon, Dr. Armstrong Danta, and Sergeant Loveland. And then there's a few others that offered to be able to join if we need some additional capacity.
Thank you, Andy. Obviously, a huge important piece is following the activities, following the outcomes. as you can see, it all kind of leads together. We first plan based on the data that we get, the risk assessments, and then we monitor the programs we have here, determine the activities and the outcomes relative to the youth that we have in this county. And then ultimately it leads to the allocations, which is the funding part of these programs or new programs as we go through. And Angel, that's your committee. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Yep, I think that it's exciting to go through the process and then get to hand out the money. But it does not come easy because we truly listen to the monitoring reports. And as I've grown within this board, I've started to pay attention to like the successes and what's working and where the flexibility is. I think that I have enjoyed being able to be on the end of listening to the monitoring sessions and getting with the allocations committee and talking about how we can best serve our students. I know that going forward, number-wise, because I'm a big number person, I'm always asking people percentages, numbers, what you're doing. It's gonna look different because we had a natural disaster. So I will keep that in mind and not be so hard on the numbers. But I think that I only have 2 people so far on the allocations committee, Santa and Craig. Thanks. So if there are others who would like to join the allocations committee.
That's what I said. I stand by it. I was voluntold I was part of that group.
The time commitment, you want to share the time commitment? So there should be there might be one meeting before the allocations day. Sometimes if there's new members, it's separate. If it's a lot of returning members, it might be the morning before the allocations hearing starts, but we will review all the process for the day. You will be given the applications from the programs and asked to read over them beforehand. And then on one of the Wednesdays in mid-March to early April, that we confirm the best date for as many as possible. We'll be in this room. We'll have programs who have applied come and share a brief overview of their program and their application. And then after all the presentations are made, it switches into deliberations. And this year, the RFP will be for the full amount. So it's $644,000, 477 that will be on the table. So all existing JCPC programs will be reapplying, and there may be new programs that also apply for the first time. So we do ask you to hold that whole day. Most of the ones I've been a part of have ended by 2:30 to 3, if not before, but we can't promise that depending on how the number of applications and the hearing goes.
This is the end of the second year, right?
Yeah.
Yes, because my first term, it was really easy. They were already in.
I don't think she did a very good job of getting more applicants for you.
Beth Craft has volunteered for allocation.
I was not gonna mention that until later.
And you all do have a decision as a committee.
For 2-year funding or 1-year funding for these programs.
And it really is exciting. It really is to have them come in and speak about what they're doing. And we found an amazing group that, this year, it's just to be able to support to me, that's the hands-on, and no offense, the planning does an amazing job.
Yeah.
And I know that you're ever.
Not as sexy.
The numbers is.
I will forever volunteer for other ones. 5 hours of planning. But no, it really is very rewarding. This group is the end to see it, and you're right, to see it and understand what they're doing and being able to read and read the things that they're interested in doing and how they've been, and then whether they did or not. And that's just as important. So it really is an awesome, and she does a great job in leading it.
Thanks.
So
that's why you also had to not give funding to programs and just being a member of the community and not giving funding. to programs and people know me, they were kind of upset. But I still stood firm on, you know, we've got to change things up and we need to make sure we're highlighting and funding programs that, one, we're already doing the work without being funded, and then just being okay with saying this is not working at this time. We can't just always just hold on to what we hope would work, because we need to be moving forward.
And so with that being said, obviously, I strongly recommend anyone that's on this council to participate in all of these while you are a part of this council. Every single one of these committees is extremely important. It helps you understand exactly what we're trying to do here with the JCPC. Obviously, we have 2 right now. It looks like Ms. Kraft is also, looks like she's joining. Is that correct? The allocations committee, did you say that?
And Shannon Martin is potentially interested. If we can find a date that works. I have a date that works for the executive, or 3 dates that work for the executive committee. So we need to confirm Chief Clement's availability or her designee, and then I'll share what other alternate options are with everyone. Brandon is a possibility if needed. Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm always there.
Okay.
Can I just inquire, and I think this came up maybe in October, but with the changes in the law in December, is that on everybody's radar in terms of, I feel like we were trying to come up with programs for 16 and 17, and now I'm like, maybe we're not needing that as much, and so this.
I was gonna speak about that, about the House bill.
Yeah.
For the 16,
Sorry.
Oh, that's right.
Didn't mean to jump.
Thank you, Judge. That kind of moves us along as we have about 20 minutes left.
We do need action on the funding priorities in order to put the RFP out.
Yes, talking about the priorities 1 through 8.
Yes, I'll put that back up.
Yep. So again, the priorities that we have that came from the planning committee, that's on page 6 of the reports. We do need a vote on that, as well as, again, these programs that are going to be coming into, that we're going to be allocating money for. There's an option for a 2-year funding or 1-year funding. I think we all believe that a 2-year funding provides more stability, allows that perform, obviously, for the data to kind of come through and trickle through. But then there's also some drawbacks as well with new programs and how they can come into play and how they can't come into play if we have those fundings. Needless to say, we'll still monitor and allocate all of these programs throughout the 2 years, but we'll lock in those types of fundings. So all that being said, we'll probably need a vote on the priorities, as well as we will need a second vote as to the type of funding we wish to look at for the next year. Let's do it separate because they're kind of different in the way they do it.
I move to utilize the proposed priority services for funding.
Do a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Can I ask for any discussion?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I've got the chief comment on, are you in support of this, on this priority, or do you need to speak on any? Remember this. Okay, that's all I need.
We need to have a conversation
Yes.
of the planning.
Okay, that's why I just wanted to ask, make sure if anybody did need to voice that there were strong issues, that they have that opportunity.
Thank you, Judge. That's exactly what we had discussed in the planning committee, is making sure that stuff gets addressed.
I did have one quick question.
Yes.
Are these priorities used, do we have, and this might already be something that's done, I'm not on planning, like a scoring rubric for how they meet these 8 priorities, or? Yeah, that's really a simple question.
Programs meet them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in allocations, some counties do this more than others. Buncombe has always looked at the priority list and the order of it as important. So the first piece is for programs in the community applying for an RFP, the program type they apply for has to fall under one of those priorities. And while there are 8 priorities there, you can see some of them have multiple pieces. So to receive funding, you have to fall under one of those. And then in addition to that, Buncombe has always looked at the priority list when they're making funding decisions on allocation day to see where programs fall. Sometimes in addition to the technical program type that the program has chosen and has to stick with, because so their data will be consistent in NCLIs, which is the program they use to track that, track youth, and then we pull things from. In addition to that, oftentimes they'll have other priority pieces that are components of their program, even if they're not the technical program type.
But the monitoring committee allows that rubric to be able to determine what the outcomes are based on the priorities that come through for that program.
Okay. Thank you.
Call the vote?
Yes.
I'm
Thank you
not,
for that discussion. Go ahead. Tim.
I'm not a voting member yet, or maybe I won't be, I don't know. But it strikes me as odd that the top priority is restitution for the victim.
And I think you said that's a mandate. So we don't have a restitution program. That's the only restitution program.
Is it Earn and Learn?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And we use it for our dispositional
Right.
process as well.
Okay.
So I think the reference is that the JCPC legislative mandate is first and foremost to provide funding for programs that do serve court-involved youth.
Okay.
And then secondarily is with additional funding to be able to serve in more of a prevention focus. Many of the programs they get JCPC funding operate in both, where they are DJJ court counsels, make referrals to them as part of a diversion or dispositional process, but they also can take referrals directly from community. But so that mandate and the need for court services to have access to that program is why it rises to the top.
It gets the top priority. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it's a good question to
I mean, I just
been
think
asked
like,
before. I know.
like mentoring be better than
Yes.
especially with the caps on restitution through the court system. There's caps on it anyway.
Well, I've heard family and parent abuse now, because I thought I heard legislation mandated that restitution be a priority, but that's not what I just heard. I don't believe. I thought I heard that they had to have access to programs, so that's 2 different things.
Yeah, it's
right?
not that restitution is a mandated program, but it is a needed program, the way for dispositional purposes that court services need. So it gets at the top as the top priority because it's one that they need to have for purposes of youth that are coming through the court system. And they get referred to that for their community service.
Get back to victims if there's a property damage or.
Sort of odd because it's sort of the only one that its mere existence is because this is the system and they'll do.
Right.
And so I think it's great for everyone who's raising issues with it because it's kind of a challenge that way, but it sort of exists because of the way the justice system has evolved.
And even though it exists for that reason, that community service piece has a very strong vocational component, restorative component. The youth are very involved in activities in the community and giving back.
So our funds, JCPC funds, help a youth pay back the restitution?
Partly, yes. Yes,
They work though, they volunteer for, so the amount of hours they volunteer for compute to a certain amount of money. So we're not just paying restitution out.
So it's sweat equity, but.
Yes,
Right.
yes, the kids have to earn that through volunteer work. They get paid for that kind of volunteer work, and that goes just directly to the restitution of the victims in those cases.
And there's an agency that monitors and does that.
Yes, it's a program we have. Yep, Earn and Learn.
Earn and Learn is the name of it.
Yes.
All the question mark?
I mean, all this is great discussion. This is all stuff that we've always talked about. That it's that we can always flush out even deeper as we get to it. But with that being said, obviously we've got our priorities the way they're listed 1 through 8. I believe we can go back. I believe Angel had a motion to approve the priority list. And we got a second from Mr. Dennis, is that right? So without all the discussion we have, if everyone's approved, can we have a yay? If there is any sort of issues.
Yay?
Want us to cheer?
Yay.
Almost Friday.
If there's
All those in favor.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Or yay, all right, if you're happy with the way that things are happening with our priorities. Obviously, if there's any discussions, anything like that, we can continue to flush those out. If there's any oppositions, please speak now with a nay, either online or here in person. Yay. Now we have the funding. So the funding we have is 2-year funding or 1-year funding. And this is for all the programs, right? We can't split up. It's all together. It is 2-year for all programs or 1 year. I know new programs have come through, or can you separate?
They can be separated, but if you all vote for 2-year funding, often the 2-year RFP will state that the allocations committee has the choice to fund each program for either 1 or 2 years. If you all go with 1-year funding, everyone who is 1 year, and then you do the same thing for year 2. And the only thing, so the 2-year funding still gives you that flexibility. You all could get in there in March and decide that because this year has been so different and, maybe all the priorities have changed because of the changes, because so many changes from Elaine, or maybe things have changed so much that in March you decide to do everyone for 1 year. That's still a priority with 2-year. That's still a possibility.
Yeah, so there's flexibility with the 2-year.
And programs who have only been funded for 1 year, brand new programs coming in are only eligible for 1 year of funding at a time. Like if you have new programs who apply, that's coming, they'll be eligible for 1 year anyway. So it's also possible to be funding some programs for 2 years and some for 1.
Okay. Any other discussion as to funding? Thank you, Lorraine, for that explanation. All right, no further discussion. We will need a motion in a second.
Motion for 2-year funding.
A second.
All right, we got a second, Angie? All right. If there's any other comments or anything like that, you don't have anything on there, Hannah, from anyone online?
No.
Okay. All right. Without further ado, if everyone's in favor, everyone say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, please say nay. All right, so we've approved the 2-year funding for programs. Obviously, we'll be able to flex that depending on each program, and if new programs come through for the RFP, they will only have 1 year allocated to them. Okay. All right, as we move down on the agenda, the next is the new application review and action. We have 3, which is community member, county commissioner appointee. Second is the DSS director designee, and the third is the district attorney designee. We do have the district attorney designee here present, be Mr. Denninger. Hannah, do we have?
We have both our current designee and
Yes.
proposed new designee.
Correct. For the other 2, do we have?
Life for Your Service. Yes, Rebecca Smith.
Yes. Hey, Rebecca.
And then Deja is a 21-year-old who has been an intern with Buncombe Alternatives and is interested in joining. She had to work today, but her application was sent for y'all's review. Karen, do you want to say anything about Deja?
It's interesting. She's been an integral part of why Earn and Learn and community service and restitution numbers are lower than they have been in the past. So I appreciate you saying not just looking at the numbers. Because it is a numbers game sometimes when you're allocating funds, but our numbers are down greatly because of school justice partnership and receiving those at the school level. And Deja's been on that. She's been phenomenal in helping look at the habitual offender and what's the root of that cause and how can we identify the client and the family at the school level and tracking those. So she comes from data, just the juvenile justice intrigue. So I highly recommend her. I don't know how long we'll have her as an intern before someone swoops her up, but she's very interested in sitting on the committee.
So Deja Cheney, because she's 21, she's not eligible for the youth under 21 spot, but with Angel moving out of a community member spot into the Parks and Rec director designee spot, we do have a vacancy at the community level. She has a true passion for the law, an additional passion for juvenile justice, currently a student at UNCA, pursuing a degree in political science and legal studies, would love to bring a young, newer perspective to the board with fresh ideas. She has full faith that the conversation of how to bring positive change will be abundant here, and she wishes to be a part of that conversation as much as she can.
Is she the only nominee for that spot at this time?
At this point in time, yes.
Thank you for that.
I don't know if you want to do those separately or if you want to hear anything from our designees.
Yes, I think Dininger, if y'all have anything to say at this point.
Again, I'm David Denninger. I'm an assistant district attorney. I've been a prosecutor for 10 years now, this month, with the state of North Carolina. I've prosecuted kind of everything from small misdemeanors to homicides and rapes. For the overwhelming majority of those 10 years, I've been involved and been a prosecutor in juvenile courts, both in this county and in other counties. So I'm familiar with the juvenile court process. And it's one that I'm passionate about. A lot of prosecutors, I think, obviously not you, a lot of prosecutors, I think, kind of can kind of be a potted plant in juvenile courts, and I prefer to have a more proactive approach and really look at all the factors and learn about the juvenile. I mean, I didn't have any experience growing up with juvenile court, but I certainly had ACE factors in my childhood. I went to an alternative school for a year and went on to be an Army officer and an attorney. And so it's near and dear to my heart to try and help kids who are in a troubled position. So I'd be encouraged to be a part of this team and think that I could contribute. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, David.
Yes, so I'm Rebecca Smith. I'm the social work director at Health and Human Services, which means I oversee child protective services and adult protective services. And unfortunately, there are a lot of parallels and connections with the juvenile justice system. And a lot of the conversation today I was really very interested in, because we're very much looking at disparities in our foster care system as well. And there's definitely some overlap there. So really interested in being a part of the discussions and decision making, and appreciate being invited to be a part of the team.
Thank you.
So Rebecca would be filling the DSS director designee position that, or DSS director Suzanne Avett was in before. And then Blythe, I believe, is preparing to step down and pass the torch for the district attorney designee. So thank you for your service. But I should also wait for the action.
Any questions from anyone here or anyone online as to potential members of
Just simply the formality. I think we talked about this before. 2 are designees and 1's an actual vote, right? And so
yes.
I think we talked about shows of, I'm not gonna get the word, like, we're thrilled to have you for the designees and then an actual vote for the others. Or
I believe they're both technically actual votes. You can still separate them out. Deja Cheney would be applying for the commissioner appointee spot, so that's absolutely an actual vote. I do believe that the designees still need to go through the formal process of having the JCPC recommend them to the Board of Commissioners. So if you'd like to do those two separately, to.
I was trying to figure out if we could put it all in one sentence by acclamation.
I thought that that's what we could do. It seems like it's
Lorraine,
still all
Lorraine
good.
would be the best point of reference.
As long as you just make that distinction.
Yeah, and we'll make that distinction at that point in the recommendation as well. But if we can have, a motion to approve, obviously, the commissioner appointee as well as the director designees, and attorney designee, and then we'll need a second as that as well.
So moved.
Second.
All right, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposing, say nay. All right, so that will be the recommendation that goes county board.
Which kid was the?
He's not here, but thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Denninger. We look forward to having y'all on this council. Thank you, Blythe.
Thank you, guys.
The time you've been here. Again, important work that y'all do. So we're looking forward to having y'all on the team.
Thank you.
All right, next. I know it's 10 o'clock, so I know, again, thank you, Sylvia.
So what's changed for juvenile justice? The law for 16, 17-year-olds has changed. House Bill 834, that's with juvenile 16 and 17-year-olds who commit A through E felonies will be charged as an adult. And I'm not sure how that will impact our programs as you talked about, so just or something else. And what happens with this process is law enforcement will contact the magistrate will contact DJJ, DJJ will contact the facility because that's where they will be housed.
Yes.
At one of our facilities, either Alexander or the nearest one, or it could be Cabarrus. Depending on the population. Also, DJJ will be responsible for getting them back to court. So that's our role for 16 and 17-year-olds who commit A through E felonies. Any questions about that?
Again, they will not be housed at the detention facility unless they turn the age of 18. Yeah, so the Buncombe County Detention Facility is right down here, will not be housing these individuals. Once they get booked through the process as an adult, at that point, it's already been told that the sheriff's office will get in contact with DJJ. They will make contact with Alexander, and a transport will immediately happen. So there will be no juvenile residing in the adult jail that we have over here.
And the cases will start.
The case will start up top, yep, and
instead of juvenile.
correct.
Kind of a huge change.
Yes, yes.
So that's the biggie for JJ. As we just talked about, complaints are still very low across the state. So it's not just Buncombe, it's across the state of North Carolina. And Angela was talking about, Angela was talking about our youth fatalities. We did have one in the community, unfortunately. So unfortunately that kid came through our system, and so we need to keep thinking about ways or what we can do to support, help, and these communities that these things are happening. And hopefully, well, I think we will have a new judge come January. This is Judge Young's last month with us. And so I was told it was going to be one of the new judges. I don't know, maybe Judge Merrill.
So the expectation right now, I think, would be that Judge Merrill will be there. I think that Judge Merrill and I both will be trying to attend the quarterly meetings that we start up again with DJJ, and that the idea might be that I'm back up. So I'm going to continue to work for my advanced juvenile justice judge degree. I've started that already, and the school government just keeps getting different certificates out, so I keep trying to chase them, I guess. But I think that's how that's going to work, and my hope is to bring her along to SJP. But my understanding is I'll still be probably the designee there as well.
Look forward to seeing you. And the last thing is thank you, big shout out and kudos to Maya, Angela, and then to Lorraine for helping kids that were impacted by the hurricane, who lost their homes, who lost everything, who were staying in hotels. They really, really helped some of those kids out. So I wanted to say publicly thank you so very much. I appreciate it. And Lorraine, to you as well. Hopefully they'll have a fantastic Christmas. Any questions? That's all I had. It was kind of short.
Staff good?
Staff is good. Yeah. No major issues or concerns at this time.
When does that change go into effect? Or?
HB 834 is already in effect.
December 1.
Number one.
December 1. On Sunday. We haven't gotten one yet. I think one may be in the process. Not really sure. Still
Yeah, the big offenses after 12/1, so those 12.
I have one question. We do have, thank you, Judge.
Yeah, my apologies. But
we do have a couple of program budget realignment updates that need action. Would it be okay to move that up to right now?
Yes. So on our agenda, we have these program updates. It looks like the review and action is for Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program, which I believe we talked about earlier. This is one of those ones that we had for the CCAs during the time that needed. Looks like, unfortunately, that Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program is no longer continuing on. So we would need an action at that point. There's a budget realignment that's already been provided. And then the next steps, Lorraine, for those monies.
Yeah, the Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program, as the clinician that was there left this past summer. As you all may recall, their funds and allocations last year were cut down to 50,000, and they were trying to decide how to fund a full-time therapist, which is what those funds had gone to. This they have not, and then the hurricane came along. They were in the process of trying to make that decision. They had in the past, when they were trying to hire a clinician, that took some time at the beginning, and they subcontracted from the ASHES to do some of their group counseling work. And then they've made the difficult decision at this point to go ahead and return the 50,000 that was allocated to them for this year. So for the remainder, so they do have a budget revision that will need a vote to be accepted because they're going to zero out their budget. So there will be $50,000 available to reallocate to current programs, because at this point, I don't believe you all would have time to do an RFP and to have any new programs. So those funds would need to be spent by June 30th. So if there are current needs that programs have, you all will be able to reallocate those funds and through budget revisions for this year. And then, yeah, so there's the first one. And then I think there was also another budget revision that y'all had.
Buncombe Alternatives has a budget revision as well. Do we need anything else in the vote of action for, there's the Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program budget realignment to go to zero, and then there's also the proposal to redistribute the money amongst existing JCPC programs through the less formal application process that's happened in the past when we've been in similar situations, in which I will send an email out with more details about the timeline, and typically programs email back a less formal but still descriptive proposal for how much funds they're requesting, how they propose to spend the funds. And I think Lorraine, in executive committee, I believe there's discussion about explicitly stating that they could be used for hurricane response or recovery expenses if needed.
if there are specific program and related expenses, they would have to be for your program that you have that's JCPC funded. But if there were extra costs because of the hurricane, you know, for those you can do a budget revision to include those. And you all will need to vote as a council or decide to ask a subgroup to do that, either executive committee or the full council at the February meeting.
That particular decision doesn't need to be made today, is that what you're saying?
Well, you all will,
the reallocation.
you won't be able to make the reallocation, like the who's getting what, you know, today. You won't be able to make that until February or hold a special meeting to do that or ask the executive committee to make recommendations. They'll vote on that, but you do need to vote on the budget revision and that you're going to do that process.
Yeah, so there's two motions here. There's a motion for the budget revision for Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program, as well as Buncombe Alternative for their budget line. And then there's another motion that we will need to redistribute the money from Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program to a sort of informal process and not an RFP due to the timing of those, of what we have for those funds.
Okay, so if Buncombe Alternatives is gonna be rolled into the first one, do you wanna speak to it briefly?
Sure, it's a zero difference in our budget. It's just a line item reallocation. And it's from the same cost center. So the increase is, I don't know if people have this in front of them, but the position of our teen court representative, since Buncombe Alternatives, all the program directors work in both programs. The position expanded roles and responsibilities in order to effectively execute the Rise in School Justice Partnership. And so you'll see there that there was a percentage decrease in the budget fringe benefits. And part of this is being a multi-year funded program, but since we did have that decrease, we wanted to allocate an increase in that position. So that's a zero balance there, and that is for the Earn and Learn program. The second tier of that is similar. It was a $5,000 percentage decrease in the budget fringe benefits. Therefore, the justification reflects the hours within the position to effectively execute the program services.
So a decrease in fringe benefits, but an increase in essentially the salary.
Correct, in the same cost center.
And you all are voting on that. Specific programs are allowed to do a cost center revision without JCPC approval, but because it involves salaries and some changes to salaries, that's why you all are being asked to vote on that one.
Any other questions or concerns, discussions that need to be had regarding the budget revisions with both Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program as well as Buncombe Alternative?
How much is in the Earn and Learn budget right now? Like, how much is in the account for Earn and Learn? Is that something we know?
How much was allocated to them?
Yeah, or how much they have?
It's about 207.
$207,000.
And that's both programs though. The agency oversees both programs, Teen Court and Earn and Learn.
Oh,
yes.
And this is just for within their existing budget. The full allocations discussions will be during the allocations committee.
Yeah, I know, I'm just curious, sorry. I'm trying to catch up real fast.
I feel like you need to be part of the allocation.
Don't you want to be a part of it?
There you go, David.
I see.
Good question, though, good question.
Yeah, I need to know what the other committees are first.
So without further ado, or any other additional discussions or questions, concerns, we will need a motion for the budget revisions for both Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Program as well as Buncombe Alternative.
A motion to accept both revisions for Buncombe Alternatives and Buncombe Counties.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition say nay. Okay, and then the next one would be the motion for the redistribution of Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical Programs money, which is $50,000, is that right?
$50,000, and I do need to make a note about that. Because the program has not spent any fund, they haven't spent any of those funds at all this year, so they're returning their full amount. And so any program receiving those will need to provide the 30% match, which can also be in kind, doesn't mean cash, but they will, if they're, for whatever amount they're asking for, they'll need to have a 30% match with that in addition.
And that won't require a formal RFP, but are we able to send that out to the programs, all the sort of information that Lorraine is sharing, so that all the programs can be made aware of this money that's out there and what's required of them in order to access that? Any discussion, questions, concerns? I'm sad to see Buncombe County Youth Justice Clinical go. I know they provided a stopgap for us during that time, so extremely important what they were able to provide for us at that time. But if there are no other questions or concerns, we will need to entertain a motion and a second for the redistribution of that money through an informal process as well. So, second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right. Real quickly, Aspire Kids, update on that briefly.
Yeah, the Aspire program had a critical incident that was found to be a critical incident in Catawba County, so not here in Buncombe. And Hannah sent out the information on the full report, and probably 3 weeks ago, a month ago now. And just to make you all aware, they did have an incident. The program was providing chef kits to families, and as part of that chef kit, they had a chef's knife in each kit, which is a weapon by policy, and so they cannot do that. And they did have an incident in Catawba County where a 12-year-old girl was with her grandmother and
Cooks for her grandmother as well through the program.
Well, yeah, she was about to take the knife to, she had a knife in her backpack and was going to take it to school to show it to her friends. And so just a lot of different issues and concerns with that. Was found to be a critical incident. The program has submitted a corrective plan of correction, excuse me, and are working on that plan. So we just want to make all counties who have that program aware that they did have that critical incident.
Any questions, any concerns? Obviously, I mean, this is vocational in and of itself, and this is a travesty, obviously, because it's an important piece, reading what she's able to provide for that family, and then unfortunately the decision she makes afterwards. It's good to know that there's a plan of action in course, but any thoughtful discussions, questions, concerns about Kids at Work and Aspire? Obviously, we have them here in Buncombe, so they do operate a culinary program here, which is a great program. But if there's any questions, concerns as they move forward here in Buncombe, we can address them now.
It's like a Tuesday for us. So, I mean, she made mistakes, she wanted to show, but I don't, so great plan of action, very deep plan of action.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah, they will no longer be handing out knives in their lunch.
I do want to just note, we still have a couple of just announcements, but also there is a meeting in here that starts directly at 10:30. We haven't resumed. We have buffer built into our reservation time, but that buffer is.
Thank you for that notification.
And just make one thing. So, organization out of New Jersey called the Toy Run Foundation brought two 20-foot enclosed trailers of toys for kids in need. We have successfully fulfilled those for the police department. We still have a significant amount of toys, so it's not like I wouldn't say like a call your free for all type of thing. It's at the outlet center. It's in between Craft and Barrel. We have a storefront Craft and Barrel and what is over there? Lee Wrangler. In between that is a store that they're not using. It is full of toys. So if you know an organization or a group and they can go by between 9 and 3 today and pick up toys for whatever. We're just hoping that it's not like, families just coming in and, or, if you know of a group that needs this, that or have we just don't have the storefront for very much longer. So, and we don't have storage for it. Okay. So that's it, 9 to 3.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Did you have anything else?
The only other thing I'll say, and I'll talk more about this in February, but just so y'all know, remediation for juveniles in North Carolina who do not have the capacity to stand trial is going to take effect January 1st. And there is an RFP out for service providers to work with juveniles. The Council of Governments, the school, Jackie Grant, the Council of Governments, she and a team are working on the curriculum. Training will be in February for those awarded it. It's a pretty quick turnaround. The RFP was resent out a few days ago. If anyone's interested in learning more about that RFP and that process, please reach out to me, and then I'll tell you all more about it in the February meeting.
It's for the whole Western region, is that right?
It's something statewide that will happen. We don't know for each region. They're looking for, what we're kind of looking for are people who might be able to serve either the whole Western region from the RFP or parts of the region. We're looking for service providers who would have the capacity to do that. We're not sure what the numbers will be, and there's a whole process for that, and it's being modeled after a curriculum that Iowa has had in place for years. Other states have it for juveniles, North Carolina does for adults, but we have not had remediation. That process available for juveniles. Dismissing the charges was the only choice up until now, so that's going to change. But if anyone's interested in learning more about the RFP, please reach out to me. I'll be glad to talk with you.
All right. I want to thank all the programs that attended. I'm sorry that we didn't have the ability to be able to give an update as to any of them. If y'all do have updates that you'd like to share, if y'all would like to send them to me, we can send them out by email, so at least we can understand what's going on in the programs. It's always great to hear the news. I'm sad that we couldn't fit it in today, but still important news to be able to share. So if there is any updates from the programs, please feel free to send them our way, and we'll make sure we disperse that out appropriately. With that being said, I think it's almost, we want to give the other group that's coming in here in about 10 minutes the time to be able to set up. So with that, yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
If there's anyone that needs park validation, come see me.
All right.
Move to adjourn. Did somebody already do that?
Yes, we got a motion right there. I don't know if we need a second.
Yeah, I just texted them about it. Just when you get over there, I probably won't see you, but just let them know you're.